All right, and welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. I am your host, Justin Smith. I'm here with co-host Dan Pomeroy, and we have a special guest today, John Sumrow. John, welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I'm tickled to be here.
I'm glad that we were able to do this. We had kind of a series of setbacks that we had planned to do this like a month ago or something like that, but I think something had happened, and I went to a catacon, and I think you went to another con, and now we find ourselves here in mid-April, but that's okay. We just let it age like a fine wine, maybe, right?
Exactly.
I thought you were at Adepticon.
Did I say Catacon? I went to Adepticon, not a catacon. I get those two confused up. Yes, Adepticon. That's where I went in late March, which was really good. So, but yes, John, well, again, welcome to the show. Sumrow, will probably refer to you more as that because that is the easier Google-ified name to find our guest out there. He is an RPG, tabletop RPG artist. He has done some major publications, including a lot for Chaosium, Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, to name just a few. Have you done RuneQuest as well, I assume?
I can confirm that the ink is not dry on the contract, but yeah, sounds like I'm going to be doing a couple of dragons for one of their supplements coming out. Later this year, probably early next year. I don't know what the timeline is, but yeah, they want me to do some dragons, so that's on deck. So
that's awesome.
Very excited about that.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about all of this because I feel like there's a lot of RPG artists out there, but you are very prominent within the tabletop RPG industry. And I think that you've got a lot to offer our listeners and maybe even some of those artists out there who are thinking how to break into the industry itself and check things out. Or we have a lot of writers that listen to the show and like what it's like hiring an RPG artist for some of your work and things like that. So we are excited to hear you talk and just kind of go through the artist business in the RPG world. So before we get to that though, we need to talk about our Geek Week. So Dan, how was your Geek Week?
Pretty geeky. I'm sorry I haven't been on the show in quite a while. Everybody's been busy as usual. But just recently, I was doing a little bit of touch-up paints, and I transferred some of my Citadel contrast paints into those little dripper bottles, and the little nozzle thing popped off, and I had like spewed all this lovely brown contrast paint in a palette. And when you do that, you start looking around quickly for a miniature that's primed that you could in fact use that color on. And so I found a catapult from that I had primed from Zombicide Green Horde, and it looked perfect. It looked like they built their trebuchet, not a catapult, the trebuchet. Looks like they built it out of railroad ties. It left this nice brown and oily, greasy. And like any nerd, I looked and went, well, now I have one painted mini out of this box of about 60 minis. Let's just plow through the rest of the box. So I decided to gird up my loins and just start plowing through Zombicide Green Horde, which I have not gotten around to playing. It's been on my shelf. I primed the minis to encourage myself to play. So anyway, I've been painting a lot of zombies, and Green Horde is the Zombicide one. They did a couple different medieval era games from the Zombicide universe, and that's one of them that I picked up real cheap when it was on sale. So that's a big part of the last couple. I've been, weekend nights where, you look at the clock and it's 2:50 something a.m. and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been painting too long. It's time to back away from the Netflix slowly and wash up. But I'm a big fan of Army Painter Speed Paint. And for my next thing, I did pre-order kind of the first pre-order box they did for Speed Paint. And that should be coming out in a couple of weeks. I'm really excited. It came with 50 brand new Speed Paints with the new formula and 3 of their metallics and a couple of bottles of stuff that they included as well. And then I found out they released a 90 paint set. that's coming out in June. So my Geek Week was to figure out exactly if I bought which combination of kits, could I maximize, this is the nerd, what's the biggest bang for the buck version of what I'm doing. So they don't put out lists. I love Army Painter, but they don't put out lists. They don't make it easy to figure out what you're buying and what kit. It's all in like JPEGs and PNGs to see what you're getting. And so I had to put together a PowerPoint slide and figuring out, I was checking off colors that I would be getting and colors I needed. And so that led me into a certain miniature market pre-order spree. And I ended up saving actually a bunch of money by just going that way instead of buying the $380 kit. So anyway, long story short, saved about $100 because I went through and figured out exactly which ones I needed. I only bought the ones that I was going to need out of their metallics kit and the rest of the new speed paints that are coming out. Still haven't used 2.0 speed paints, but it looks like I'm all freaking in. So confirmation bias will be rampant when it comes out. I'll be like, these are amazing. These are the best paints I've ever used in my life. How could I ever use anything else? Because, once you're $300 in on paint, you're in confirmation bias land pretty heavily. So very paint focused Geek Week from me.
Very good. Very good. Sumrow, how was your Geek Week?
It was fantastic. It was very chaotic, pun intended. Spent the last several days at Chaosium Con 2023. It's the second Chaosium Con. And I had an art table and got to hang out with everyone who's doing Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, RuneQuest. Huge shout out to Chaosium for having me there. And it was fantastic.
Where is it held?
It is too much to talk about. I mean, it was so much to do. So, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay.
Ypsilanti, actually. And we had this conversation yesterday. I was talking to some of the coordinators, like, why that location? And apparently, Chaosium, or I should say, Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, RuneQuest, all huge. In Europe, and if they need to have it at a big hub and for international travel, Ann Arbor is ideal for some reason. So because if you come from Australia, no matter where you go on the globe, it's expensive. Ann Arbor is decent for international travel, people coming in, and that's a huge chunk of their demographic. So I was like, I did not know that. I learned tons this weekend. So
I would not have pegged Ann Arbor as like the travel hub of the world. I've been through like Cincinnati. I've been through like, Chicago, New York, Atlanta. Ann Arbor? Not yet. I haven't checked that box off yet.
Yeah. No, it was fantastic. The girlfriend has family just ever so slightly across the border in South Bend, Indiana. So we stopped there for a few days, had fantastic barbecue, and then conned for 3 days solid. Got some gaming in, some RuneQuest, some Call of Cthulhu. Got to beta test. Shout out to Keeper Doc. Got to beta test one of his scenarios that's very creepy with Houdini in it, and that was cool. Girlfriend got to play some RuneQuest, which was fantastic, and we're kind of on a RuneQuest kick right now. Don't get us wrong, Call of Cthulhu is fantastic. That's my main jam. But I've been RuneQuesting with the actual line editor, Jeff Richards. Shout out to him and the whole crew. I am so spoiled. I've been RuneQuesting with the line editor of RuneQuest for the last 9 months, and we're on our second leg of our campaign. And this is the first time I ever played RuneQuest, so I'm totally spoiled now, and it's been epic.
You kind of came in a little high in terms of having a GM that knows the game.
And everyone I play with, I'm playing with other shout out to OC. OC is my Finnish buddy. He did the cover for the starter set of RuneQuest. He's a phenomenal artist. Everyone go check out OC. He is fantastic, and he is in the campaign as well. It has been I am over the moon with that campaign that we were working on. It's we're going into our second leg at the end of this month, actually. And I can tell you, yeah, it is fantastic. I when I got invited to the game, I was like, holy crap, I'm going to be in the same campaign as the guy who did the cover for the starter set. I'm fangirling on OC. I'm like, I love your art, sir. I just got the weapons and gear book, and you did he's got stuff in there. He did the cover. I'm like, come on, man. I am kid in a candy store, and I'm just like pinching myself. Is this real? Am I campaigning with the line editor? And yeah.
That starter box is great. We did a play test of it as a group for the podcast, and we just were, the quality in that box was just over the moon. Art, game, everything.
I say this over and over, and it's not, and I'm not biased. This is purely me. I'm putting on my hat from when a friend of mine said, "Hey, you want to try this Call of Cthulhu thing?" And I'm like, "I've heard of it. I loved it. I've really wanted been playing it." And my buddy Tim ran Blackwater Creek for me and some friends, and I was hooked ever since. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, and the starter set for that, starter set for Call of Cthulhu, starter set for RuneQuest. I just got back from Chaosium Con. They had 2 copies of the new Pendragon starter set, and we got to flip through them. These are press copies that you go through, and if everything's copacetic, you sign off, and it is literally a spitting image of what's going to come off the press. 2 copies they had, and they are jaw dropping. I am an artist. I've been a graphic designer for 20 years, and now I'm moving into game art, that sort of thing. So purely from a graphic designer, from a graphic design point of view, I'm putting on my graphic design hat. I'm putting on my artist hat. Gorgeous. Pendragon starter set is the bee's knees. I was flipping through that. I missed the window on that one. I will have stuff in the main course set, but the starter set is gorgeous. Chaosium can do no wrong when it comes to starter sets. They pack them with content and gorgeous art, and I could talk for days about just the starter sets.
One of the things that I, mentioned to Mike Mason when he was on our show, last summer, is I said, Mike, you're selling the Call of Cthulhu starter set for like between $20 and $25, depending on where you get it. I said, how are you not taking a loss on this? Like, because there's so much in there. Just the printing alone has got to be $20, and then let alone the shipping and that. I mean, because of the set of dice, it's just, there's 3 adventures in there. It's just so good. And the RuneQuest one was a little bit more expensive. I think I got it for like $40. But you want to talk about heft in a starter set? Like, I mean, the maps and the character sheets and all the stuff. I mean, it is just like jam packed. It's like you take off the saran wrap and it's like bursting with like content. Like it wants to explode out of the box. It's so much good stuff in there.
Yeah, the RuneQuest starter set, again, between the Call of Cthulhu starter set and RuneQuest starter set, they set, if you look at like D&D, that sort of thing, or whatever, Traveler, it's pretty decent. Traveler is awesome. But Chaosium, the starter sets, especially RuneQuest, there's 14 pre-gens in that, and they're all fully fleshed out. They literally fold out as like it's called a gate fold. They do the gate fold, and on the sidebars, they have all the armor, like where you're going to get hit and everything. Maps galore. They have the Glorantha setting, which is fantastic. It's in book, I believe, 2. Like first one is the rules, second one is the Glorantha, whatever. But then they have the, it is jam packed with content, and they literally set the bar. There is nobody that comes close. And Call of Cthulhu, there was the newer version too. They did a second edition, and all new art. They killed it again. For $25. The point is, get that is enough content to play for like a year. In the RuneQuest set, and then you can, the point is, put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to knock somebody's socks off and get them into a game that potentially they could be playing the rest of their life, I mean, you got to put that, good foot forward,
For sure. And we just played, so I'm going to get into my Geek Week a little bit here. On Friday night, we played the One Ring RPG with the second edition One Ring RPG from Free League Press. And we used their starter set. So it was a Hobbit adventure in the Shire, and they had a very nice fold-out map, and like their pre-gens were pretty nice. I will say that I feel like the content and the quality of Chaosium is unrivaled in the industry in their starter sets, and the close second would be Free League, because we've seen the Aliens RPG set, the starter set that they have for that. Which is really, really good. And then we also got the One Ring one. And I've got to jump into my Zweihander starter set. I hear that that's pretty good as well.
Yeah, I'll give an honorable mention to the Dune starter kit, but it's at a significantly higher cost than some of the others that we've mentioned. But certainly with the dice and the quality and the beautiful printing, but Modifius did a lovely job, but it's going to cost you just a little bit more.
My point that I've always said that I think makes Chaosium stand apart with their starter sets is actually the solo adventures that they put in there. Because if you're brand new to the system, you're kind of like, what's the feel of this? What's the feel of the setting? Like, what's the, how does the pace of game work? Like, how do these roles work? And you can read something and intellectually understand how it works, but until you play it in a game, sometimes you don't get a good feel of the flow or the feeling that you get, especially for like a horror game, right? You want that feeling of like, oh my gosh, things are just getting worse, and the solo adventures that they put in there, both Chaosium and RuneQuest, and I will say even more for RuneQuest for me, because I played Call of Cthulhu a couple of times before I started to run it. But RuneQuest I had never played before. And so to play the solo quest, I got a great feeling of like, what is this Glorantha setting that I'm in? How do these tribes work? How do these runes work? And, you got to just do this fun solo kind of, choose your own adventure style RPG. And it was great fun for like 2 hours that I did, like just by playing with myself, like just like, rolling dice and, looking up like, oh, I failed that one. What's going to happen now? Right. And I, go to that next one. And it was just great. And then when I finished it, I said, I am confident that I can run this starter set adventure with my friends, because I did that solo adventure. So that really, in my opinion, just makes Chaosium like above and beyond when it comes to their products.
Yeah, no, and exactly. And they echo the themes too in the solos. If that's a huge thing. When I went through I got the starter set for RuneQuest, and you go through it, and one of the key themes is honor. How are you gonna honor yourself and your tribe when you fight the enemy and and meet them on the field. And same thing with they weave the themes of the game also through the solos also, like in Alone Against the Flames, straight up. I mean, as a horror game, you do feel, and this is throughout all their solos. They have several solos: Alone Against the Tide, Alone Against the Dark, for Call of Cthulhu. All of them play on claustrophobia, being alone against the things that are coming to to scare you. And that it enforces those themes of horror, which is fantastic. I mean, you're literally evading or doing this, that, and the other, and like, yeah, it's just you and the elements, or just you and the monster, and they're great.
We have Patreon for the podcast that we put out, and one of the things that we offer is monthly RPG adventures that we write. Sometimes it's going to be a D&D 5e, sometimes it's Shadow of the Demon Lord, and other times it's going to be Call of Cthulhu. Like, we're just going to kind of put out a bunch of different flavors. The one that I'm working on for Call of Cthulhu is a solo adventure that I'm calling Alone Against the Mind. So I grew up in northern Nevada, and just like 30 minutes south of where I lived was Virginia City, Nevada, and that's where the biggest silver mining boom happened in the world, and literally paid for like Lincoln to win the Civil War, and caused a crazy price shift of the price of world silver. They pulled out in today's dollars $23 trillion worth of silver, in like 1860 to 1873 or something like that. So it's just crazy. It's like a huge thing. But like the Mayans was like kind of part of like growing up. So I thought it would be awesome to do like an adventure of like going into a mine and just having things go badly, so it could be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that, finishing it when I can.
I'm going to drop a terrible pun. It sounds like a very rich setting.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I apologize profusely for that pun. That will not happen again.
Don't apologize.
That won't happen. That won't happen again.
I'm sure it won't. So yeah, well, I'm jealous that you got to go to Chaosium Con. I saw a bunch of stuff coming up in my Twitter feed about it, and I said, oh man, I think I miss it. I need to put it on my calendar for next year, because we did Adepticon and I enjoyed it, but I think I would love to try Chaosium Con. And I assume it's going to be around the same time, probably next year, like mid-April-ish.
Yep, probably.
Yeah.
They schedule it pretty much on the consistently. Yeah, it's first year was 2 days. They were just getting their sea legs because they'd never done a con solo. Today, this year was 3 days, and they have big plans already cooking for next year.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. But it is a gaming con. You're going to game a lot and meet the talks they have. They fly in everybody from the four corners. Lynn Hardy was here showing her off her brand new Rivers of London RPG, which is in hardback now.
Yep.
I got to sit in, Paul Fricker and Mike Mason. That was the last panel I went to. And it was fantastic watching them riff it back and forth, and they did a whole AMA, and they hinted at new things coming, and it just played the crowd. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. That is awesome. We go to Gen Con regularly. We go to for our board game and RPG stuff. We go to the Nova Open and Adepticon and Las Vegas Open for like our wargaming type of stuff. So we are used to gaming cons, and we're no strangers, and we love them. That's our kind of guilty pleasures, I think.
Nice. So, have you been to ReaperCon?
No,
I'm aware of that in Texas. I hear great things about it, especially, of course, Reaper's known for minis and painting and having a lot of great access to jumping in and improving your painting skills. Or we're going from zero to something, and Reaper's well known for that, especially what they have at Gen Con. So I'm a fan of Reaper minis. I don't have as many of them as I'm a fan of, but I think they're a great company.
Yeah. I'm nestled in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so I'm trying to kind of radiate out, and we have Bubonicon here, which is one of the oldest cons in the U.S. It's a literary con. It's small. It's fantastic. But I go 6 hours north, and I get to do Genghis Con, and I do that the last couple of years with my friends. Shout out to Donnie and Andrea who run it. It is fantastic. If you're in Denver, Colorado, you need to go to Genghis Con. It's excellent. It is solid gaming. And I bumped into one of the reps for a ReaperCon last year at Genghis Con, and he's all, "You need to come out. It's very art focused. It's all about people getting their paint on with minis, and it's very artist leaning, and I did not expect that. And I do a little Frostgrave. I do a little, that's the most miniature kind of stuff I do. I'm not a huge mini guy, but don't get me wrong, I love them. I just need to get into it and find time to actually play more Frostgrave. But I've been told this past weekend, multiple people came out of the woodwork and said, "You need to go to ReaperCon." It's, and I'm like, okay, well, after the third person at Chaos, like, Go to ReaperCon. It's artist centric. It's a guy, people who are trying to better, get good at painting, and it's very art leaning. And I'm like, okay, you sold me. So
yeah, sounds awesome.
I have not gone, but I'm down because it'll be a drive, but I think it'd be cool. I'll try that.
We all need to figure out how to get on the professional con circuit. Like get sponsors that we can put on our car, or like our shirts or tattoos or something like that will pay for us to just go around and do cons. That'll be pretty good.
Make content.
Right. Yeah.
I had this conversation with Jeff Richard, the line editor and shout out to Jeff. He's fantastic. Thank you for everything. Chaosium has been ridiculously kind to me. And I had this conversation with him like yesterday or Saturday, I think it was. And he's like, how you doing? And, he stopped by the booth and I'm like, I am doing fantastic. I set a new record. And he goes, good. And then I'm like, the goal, I had this conversation with the girlfriend. The goal, she comes with me. We have a high old time. We game. I sell my art. And we get a weekend of fun, like gaming and selling art, meeting people, met tons of new people. And I had this conversation more than once with Jeff. I was like, that's the goal, is when what you do and what you love will fuel you and get you. It becomes the same thing. It becomes like a lifestyle. It becomes like, that's the thing. When the thing you love pays for itself and propels you forward, you've done the right thing,
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
That's great.
Well, it sounds like a very geeky week for all of us, especially you, Sumrow. So I'm super jelly. Even though we got an RPG on Friday night, that was still good times. But that was pretty good. So Dan, I think that it's about time for our geek news.
Oh my gosh!
Oh no, I didn't give him a time.
I thought you were going to do more Geek Week for you, but that's okay.
I just talked about the One Ring, which is great. So all right, let me try this again. Dan, I think it's about time for our geek news.
Welcome to Tabletop and Beyond News.
The audio from the phone is the best. It's my favorite part.
We keep it real low rent around here. Low rent.
Duct tape and bubble gum, ladies and gentlemen.
A lot has been going on in gaming. And we're trying to diversify the things that we talk about. So I wanted to talk about some board game news that looked interesting. I mentioned Zombicide before. The current Kickstarter that CMON is doing for Zombicide is for the winter. I clicked off that tab. When you click off a tab, it's so professional. It's the White Death, Zombicide White Death. So this is the fantasy themed Zombicide. This time White Death is in the snow, and it is very Asian oriented. So you've got like a Great Wall kind of thing happening, and you have, samurai and stuff like that. So that's out now. And the thing that caught my attention is one of the add-ons to this particular game is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle based. So there's a whole separate zombie compatible game that's TMNT. So you have samurai versions of all of the four turtles and Splinter, and the girl in the yellow jumpsuit is
April Murphy.
April, she has a harp or whatever, and Splinter is of course samurai'd out to the nine. So it's interesting. CMON is like, okay, now we're gonna have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles time travel into an alternate universe to fight zombies in Asia in medieval times. Sign me up. Sounds great. So
it sounds like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Lost in Time. Literally, like the plot of that movie.
All sorts of just. Sometimes I love it when it's just a huge blender of random crap in a game, and somehow it all makes sense. So if you're interested, go on to Kickstarter. They've got a video for the basic game, as well as the TMNT. At the it's a standalone $50 game. That is one of the rewards. It's part of that Kickstarter. Cool. So it's interesting stuff. Also, in competitive tabletop news, there is a Magic the Gathering rare and bizarre Chaos Orb that is going to go on auction. A Chaos Orb card that's going to go on auction for $10,000. And because it's in perfect mint condition. Now, this was a card that was banned back in 1994. It was part of the original alpha release of the game. But while you played the game, you would pick up the card and you would drop it. And if it landed face up and hit the other guy's stuff, you would automatically kill it and it would kill itself. So this card got banned really fast. But first of all, it was banned. It was alpha. And if you had one and you played it, it meant you were picking it up and dropping it on a regular basis. So the stuff that happens in Magic the Gathering never ceases to amaze me. It's just like gaming dialed up to 11 in very strange ways. And what happens in Magic the Gathering seeps out and affects other things. And let's not forget, if it wasn't for Magic the Gathering, D&D would never have been financially rescued by Wizards of the Coast. So as much as it's weird, we owe them the Gamer Congressional Medal of Honor for keeping D&D alive. So
Sumrow, have you ever done any art for Magic the Gathering? And I mean, they're famous for their art stuff.
Oh my God, I wish. That is no, I have not. That is on my bucket list. It is highly competitive. Mm-hmm. I had a fantastic, I keep using the word fantastic. I had an amazing portfolio review. It was 2 years ago. I'm going to give a shout out to Aaron B. Miller. He's done over 100 Magic the Gathering cards. And I was curious, do I know any friends? I was on the Facebooks and the things and the social medias. I was like, do I know? I was just getting my traction and I knew I was not ready, but I plan ahead. And I was like on social medias, who do I know who can give me at least like an idea of what the process is? Because they stopped doing their submission email. I believe there was a thing. I'm not that familiar with the whole process. So I was like, okay, how do you, where am I at? What are we doing? And a good friend of mine on the internet's Kat Roberts, she tagged Aaron Miller, who she didn't know at the time was, he's on my top. I think his art is fantastic. He is, totally an idol and a secret mentor. I'm like, I follow this guy. I study what he does. His technique is he's an oil painter. I mean, what more do you want? I love oils. And he's fantastic. I saw the Midgard. I talk circuitously. Sorry. I'll get a point here and here. I saw his Midgard cover for Cobalt Press, and it was like a Griffin Rider full plate. And I'm like, who is this dude? And I saw that piece. And I was like, oh, that's oils. Okay, well, okay, wow. And I was hooked on his art ever since. So my friend, I was just being silly on Facebook or whatever, and I'm like, who do I know? How do I get in? Blah blah blah. And my friend Kat tagged him. Aaron will know, and he chimed in, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he chimed in. He goes, yeah, what do you want to know? And then the next thing I know, he's all. We DM'd each other and we'll say, well, I'll give you like an hour or so portfolio review. This is lockdown, mind you. This is right after lockdown happened. And he was the nicest guy on the planet. You can meet your heroes. I've been wanting to go to his illustration workshop forever. The stars haven't aligned. And they took this year off. I believe they're going to come back next year. I am definitely going to get out there and check out his a workshop and paint for a week. He gave me it was like an hour and a half via Zoom out of the goodness of his heart. He was super nice. And he's all, these two pieces are awesome. Go in that direction, dump that, and then he was very kind. He's all, how hard do you want this? And I'm like, I'm trying to be a pro, sir. Just hit me,
Yeah.
Rip off the Band-Aid. I don't care. I've been a graphic designer for 20 years. Nothing you say will hurt me. Suits in a meeting will tell you exactly what they feel about your work. So nothing you can say can. I get it. I'm trying to be a pro. Hit me. he gave me an hour and a half of straight, no BS. These two pieces are, if you just did that style, you'd be fine. You need to dump the humor, because Magic the Gathering Wizards they do some humor, but if you're trying to get in, they don't want the humor thing. And I tend to have happy-go-lucky. I like humor in my art, and I don't think I can. I don't think I can get rid of that totally. And he goes, "You should probably be getting work already." And I'm like, "Yeah." At the time we talked, yeah, I just got my toehold in Chaosium, and I'm working on my first 8 pieces. Blah blah blah. And he goes, "Yeah, you're right about where you need to be, and work on your anatomy and go back to school. Blah blah blah. And I'll see you in 2 years. You'll probably get there." And
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's amazing.
2 years later, I still haven't got a card, but I have not tried to bust into that.
We'll blame COVID on all that crap.
Yeah, right. And my career has been, it's my own path, and I'm not trying to put the pedal to the metal or anything to get into this. So Magic the Gathering, everybody wants to do a card or a 10 or 100, and I get it. But I'm kind of a genre. I like horror. I like sci-fi, and that's fine. Give me, a year or two, and I'll try to get a card. But at the same time, I'm quite happy doing work for Chaosium. It's very emotional for me. I went from just trying to better my work to all of a sudden, I got in and they gave me, I can take as much work as I want. I just need to, knuckle down, and the faster I go, the more they will throw cool things at me. And it's now just a matter of trying to pick and choose my proper, what do you take? What do you say no to? It's hard turning down projects. That's a huge thing, but you need to, at the end of the day, it needs to be a good fit for what you do. If it's, you can't just take everything. It needs to be a really good fit for both you and the client. I mean, if it's a good fit, you're going to do your best work. They're going to get your best work, and you're both happy. Don't take stuff you don't want to do. It was a real mess with your head moment. They pitched me a lot of Lynn Hardy, sent me an email and said, "Hey, can you do Rivers of London?" And I'm like, I just came off of Cults of Cthulhu, and I'm like, and we just talked about this yesterday. I'm like, I'm so sorry I turned down your project, but it's not a good fit for me. YA urban fantasy is kind of in my wheelhouse, but it's not my straight dope. I mean, I like horror. I like things that explode. I like Cthulhu and WW2. That sounds like I'd love to do some, WW2 or Cthulhu or I don't know. I mean, I like monsters and things. So
yeah, you have to fuel your niche. It's like you have to draw inspiration from the work that you're doing. Otherwise, you get disengaged from it, and you don't want to be punching a clock in the arts. You lose the drama.
Yeah. And I have this spiel that I give to a lot of artists. I bumped into, especially at Genghis Khan. I had a great time. Met a couple of new people who wanted to break in, and I tell them over and over, don't do everything. You can't. You have to pick your time. You have to pick, and if it's not a good fit, pass that project and do a personal piece. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if you do a personal piece of something you really love, and it will show in the piece because you liked it. And if that just goes in your portfolio and you don't get $1, right? Guess what? You are one portfolio piece closer to your dream job.
Yeah.
And that's a better fit for you than doing this one gal. A couple of years ago, she goes, "Well, I'm always swamped doing Pokemon cards for my, does drawings for my friends. It does make money." And I'm like, "Right, but what do you really want to do?" And it was something totally different. And I'm like, "Well, stop doing that." I'm like, if you do what you love, guess what people will ask for? If you only put these 5 things that you love forward, they art directors, line editors, whoever, even your friends, personal commissions, whatever, they only have those 5 things this is what you do. They only have that limited, narrow window of what you're showing. And so guess what you're going to get more of? The thing you like to, the thing you love. Just do that. And then it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's cyclical, So.
Yeah, for sure.
But
that's great. Well, it's good to have that level of self-awareness when you're managing, the art, the career. That's great. That's great. I got a couple quick news items, and I know one of them you're really familiar with. I'm going to do these in not the order that I posted them. Just super quick. We've regularly mentioned Free League. They've just announced the release date for their 5th edition version of their Lord of the Rings Middle Earth setting. Be a 236-page hardcover. It's coming out in May. That should be exciting for people who don't want to learn the One Ring system, but they enjoy 5th edition. Also, it'll help folks not have maybe a too magic heavy version of Lord of the Rings, because if you just pull D&D off the shelf, there's a lot of magic stuff that's probably not very applicable to that particular genre. And it'll also have the Shire missions that Free League has put in their own box set. Justin and I just did 3 or 4 of those just a couple nights ago. Had a great time. They were a lot of fun, but they'll have the 5th edition versions of all this stuff. So this is not the first 5th edition skin for Lord of the Rings. There was another one by the previous license holder, and the name of that company escapes me, so I apologize to them. So this would be the second 5th edition skin on Lord of the Rings, but we know Free League has really done nice things with that property, and so I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'm a sucker for Lord of the Rings lore rather than kind of Forgotten Realms lore, and so I do. 5th edition is really, I only have 2 fantasy RPGs on my shelf, 5th edition and Genesis Terranoth. So if I want to branch out, I don't want to branch too far. My synapses are getting old, and I'm getting lazy about wanting to learn new systems. My last piece of news is really about the.
Sorry, Dan. Let me just say this real quick. I did put out on Twitter today, kind of like an initial review of the One Ring that we did, and just kind of some of the pros and cons that I put out there. I put one of the pros I thought was the One Ring system. I thought it was great. It was so easy to pick up and learn. I actually think it's an easier system than 5e. I mean, obviously, if you know 5e, 5th edition, then, picking this up is probably pretty easy. But if you've never picked up an RPG before, I would choose the One Ring over probably Lord of the Rings role-playing in the 5th edition.
I would agree with you. Yeah. I think it's much more streamlined than D&D is, and D&D is customized to itself. D&D needs to be good at being D&D, and so I'm always in favor of buying the system that's kind of written to the IP to get the feeling right. But at the same time, the install base of 5e is pretty big out there, and, especially with how successful it's been. And so for me it would be like I am more likely to buy a core book of 5th edition Lord of the Rings and throw that on my shelf than I am to buy like a D&D adventure. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just less likely to buy it because I'm more interested in Lord of the Rings. So anyway, that's out there, and the nice thing is Free League gets to repurpose their interpretations of the lore and the art, which we all know is pretty phenomenal. Great. Last one is the Pathfinder Studio has released the first draft of the Orc Universal role-playing game license for public comment. They're not going down the Creative Commons route the way Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro has decided to manage the open gaming license for D&D. The purpose of Paizo Publishing and Azora Law to do this is to make sure whatever goes out is unrevocable, universal, and can't be the rug can't be pulled out from underneath content creators. Kind of to the same degree that Wizards got a reputation for just in the last several months. There is a copy of the license that's out, as well as a Q&A document that you can find. It's called the Orc Axe, the AXE, if you're interested in their Q&A. So for folks who are interested in building on the 5e install base that we just talked about and want to be able to publish their own content and want a framework to do that legally, it's looks like it's going to be very useful, highly useful for that. Sumrow, I think you had mentioned that you were you were talking to a company that had just rushed to get a game out on this Orc license. Can you fill us in on what you encountered?
Absolutely. Literally last week, Chaosium released the basic role-playing engine, their updated 7th edition version. It is the first RPG published under the new Orc license. And I got some art in there with my good buddy OC. Luik, another one of their famous artists, has got doing the cover. And that literally dropped last week, and they did a whole thing at Chaosium Con. Basic role-playing engine. It is literally the D100 system that Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, all the things run on. And very tickled to have some art in there. So
you can use the legal framework of the Orc license without necessarily having a 5e-esque type rule base that you're working with. So you can the game system there's lots of room for whatever game system that could be, whatever rule set can be published underneath that license without it necessarily being, strength dex down the line in a classic 5e way. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
That's cool. Well, I think these tools are great for people to really kind of embrace the hobby and add to it and be compensated for what they're doing. And a rising tide lifts all boats. It's good to have a D&D movie in the theaters. It's good to have small time content creators be able to put out new products, and to have new people just join and find the thing that they enjoy the most. So we're fans of it all. We're fans of it all. There's not much that we have a lot of hate for around here on Tabletop and Beyond. So that is the end of the news. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Dovetail on that. I was laughing out loud throughout the entire D&D movie. I thought I got my $15 worth. Absolutely. Easily. Don't get me wrong. I mean, whatever system, whatever, Hasbro's up to, whatever, at the end of the day, D&D is a, household name now.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie was hilarious. I thought me and the girlfriend thoroughly enjoyed it. We laughed our heads off with some friends for an hour and a half, and it felt like a real D&D session. Like, I mean, they, you making plans, they go sideways, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I was laughing hysterically the whole time. No spoilers, but go see that. It's good.
Yeah, I'm taking my 14-year-old tomorrow, I believe.
Have you seen it yet, Dan?
I haven't.
Okay.
No, I got hornswoggled into Mario with the younger son. So.
There you go.
I got a good nap in. No, it was cute. It was fun.
Yeah.
But it did fall asleep.
Yeah, I went and saw it with the family like a week and a half ago, and we had a great time watching it. Like, I mean, you go into this knowing that it's not going to win an Oscar for Best Picture, right? Like, you just, so don't have that expectation going into it, and you're going to have a great time watching this movie. And I totally agree with you. It was like easy $15 spent. I totally thought I got my money's worth. I very much enjoyed it. Am I going to be crossing my fingers next February to see if it's going to win any awards? Not really. And that's okay. I don't need it to, right? It did everything I needed it to for me. So
that would kind of ruin it a little bit.
It kind of would, I think,
No, so, that's why we have movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right,
that movie is amazing movie. If you've not seen that, go see that. It is that movie actually sparked. You come out of that movie and you go, wow, movies can be cool again. Movies can be their own thing and be unique again. I mean, I literally walked out of the theater and going, that made my top 10 list of all time.
Yeah.
Easy.
Wow.
It knocked out. Oh, yeah. If a movie makes you think for like 3 days later and you're going, oh,
Yeah.
they meant the thing was the inverse of the, oh my God. And it keeps revealing itself to you days later. You that's art. That's art.
That's a win. Sorry. That is for sure a win.
That's cool. My wife and I broke down, and just because we've determined, it looks like the Hollywood COVID lull has kind of broken, and they're being able to put out more quality stuff in a regular clip. We just did the season passes for Alamo Drafthouse. I don't know if you guys have Alamo Drafthouse. It's like we bought the $20 a month per person. You could go watch one movie every day for a month. They know they're making their money on food for you anyway. So I'm looking forward to getting caught up on that, which comes to the cinema and getting out of the house. And streaming has been great, and I like the pause button because there's plenty of things you can get done with the pause button, but at the same time, it's sitting in a cinema is its own special experience that I think it has its own important entertainment value.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. For sure. Cool.
Well, thank you for the news, Dan. We appreciate it.
You bet.
A lot of good stuff coming out. So let's get to our main topic, which is you, Sumrow. Like, you are our main topic today. So as we talked about before, we'd like to kind of get to know how you've gotten into the industry, like what challenges you've kind of faced, what you've sort of had to overcome, what has been your experience being an artist in the RPG community, what your background is, how did you get into it, like all of that kind of stuff. You've talked a lot about different things, and that's how our conversational podcast kind of goes already. But why don't we start from kind of the beginning? Like, you decided at one point to be an artist. You said that you were a graphic artist for like 20 years. What kind of made you want to be an artist? It was always just kind of a natural inclination. Did you kind of stumble into it? And then, how did that translate into game art?
Yeah. I've always been an artist since I can remember, drawing monsters and making masks and stuff like that. I had some really crappy, fantastic wizards and dragons in ballpoint pen in my notebooks in middle school. Then I hit high school and I fell into this one, shout out to Miss Mullen, my art teacher in high school. She went from 0 to I could draw realistically in 1 year. And that was because she taught from Betty Edwards' Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Go get that book. It's fantastic. The science in it, or the understanding of how the brain works, is slightly different now. It's not as... We know much more about how the brain works now, but the whole left brain, right brain thing as a metaphor still holds up. That's how you learn how to draw. Go get that book. And throughout high school, I kept drawing, and I did a lot of art over the years. Fell into graphic design, and have been a graphic designer for years. I did studio photography and lighting. I've been told, your art looks very... the lighting in it is fantastic. I'm like, well, I did pro lighting in studio for years. I paid, and it does translate. You want to learn good lighting? Go check out the masters or do photography. It all applies. But
sorry, let me just say something real quick. Sure. We do a lot of miniature painting here, right? And if you follow some of the best miniature painting people, they're always saying, what is the light? Like, what should the light be doing on this miniature? And it's all about the light. Like 90% of painting a miniature is about the light. And, like, how's it reflecting? How's it like shining? How's it doing this? How's it doing that? And that's how those people get to kind of next level, is understanding how light should be interacting with the different things that are going on. Right. So
that's how we see. I mean, lighting is everything that is going in your eyeball, and it's true. And so, fast forward, I was a graphic designer for several years, and then around the mid 2010s ish, I kind of got into a lull, and I'm like, what am I missing? I'm like, I miss drawing and painting. And at this point, I've been my career was in full swing. I was knee deep in that. Everything was going smoothly, but there was something missing. I'm like, man, I miss drawing and painting. I had to get my career going as a graphic designer. That's a very safe bet, right? And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother discussion. I got into graphic design at a very interesting time, right when lead type was disappearing and digital was taking over. So I've seen it all. Not to toot my own horn, but it was just a very interesting time. I've seen everything go digital, and that was interesting. And now we're doing it again with all kinds of new technologies that are taking over. Right. So I dabbled a while. I played around, and pop culture T-shirts were just starting to break through and become a thing. And I had a weird, thank my lucky stars, I got into online pop culture T-shirt scene right when it started blowing up. I just, luck of the draw, I said, I need to draw, I need to get better, and then do something with my art. I found the T-shirt scene, which is fantastic. You can actually, as long as you have a really good, funny idea, good idea, and you could draw half-ass decent, you can get in and you get paid royalties. And I got in at right the time, right before it exploded. And I did, and my light got unplugged and everything falls apart. Hey, everything exploded and things happen. Uno momento. One second.
No worries. No worries.
Speaking of lighting, fixing. Okay. There we go. Hey, stuff, things. Speaking of lighting. Wow.
Yeah, okay. There we go. Let there be light.
So yeah, I got into the T-shirt scene, and this is early Facebook too. At the same time, when the algorithm, there was no algorithm. It was the Wild West, and I built a huge, pretty decent fan base for one guy. And did lots of T-shirts, and everybody loved my stuff. And I got paid pretty good while learning how to draw well. So bar to entry was low. If you had a good idea, you could draw decent, you could get a paycheck, get royalties, and build a fan base. This worked out well. T-shirt bubble popped 5 years later. I made my bones, and then things went sideways. T-shirt bubble popped. Personal life was kind of on the rocks, whatever. I took a couple of years off, and then I'm like, okay, well, here we are again. Time to reinvent myself again. This time I'm going to do no more pop culture. Pop culture is too easy. If you put a TARDIS on anything, it'll sell. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I love Doctor Who. I love Firefly, all the things. But there's nothing like someone coming to your booth, buying a print of a piece of art that came whole cloth out of your brain. You spent days painting, drawing this thing, and they go, I like this. This resonates with me. And I see blah, blah, blah in it. Personally, they buy it and they walk away. Nothing replaces that. When somebody buys a T-shirt off you with Firefly, Serenity, Doctor Who, they're not buying you. They're buying the Doctor Who and the Serenity. You were the vehicle, sure, but, and I'm just being honest here. I'm just being the real deal.
You're just derivative. You're just derivative of the Firefly franchise, right? So...
Yeah, I mean, they're buying. Yeah, it's somebody there's a billion people who can draw Batman out there, and when fans come to the con and they buy your $20 Batman print, they're buying Batman,
right?
And you're second, and I'm not trying to wrap ego into this. I try to be egoless. I try to keep that in check. The whole Zen thing. But at the end of the day, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do art again. And what am I going to do? I started a Patreon. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. It was black and white. I kept it simple. And I'm like, I'm going to make one piece of art a month because I've been slacking. I've been doing nothing for 2 years. I'm going to force myself. I gamified my art career. So this is what I did. I figured if I start a Patreon every month, I have to make a piece of art and send it out into the world. Right? That puts the onus on me. Deadlines are good for artists. I don't care who you are. So I started doing that. 6 months in, it was going well. Switched to color, got even better. And my theory was, I need to not fall off the horse again. I need to make my art my way and rebuild my portfolio towards something. And game art, I had just got into Call of Cthulhu, D&D, 5e, so it all hit at the same time. So I was like, okay, well, I was playing Blackwater Creek with my buddy Tim. He ran us through it, and I'm flipping through the book, the core book, and I'm like, oh man, I can do this. Give me a couple of years, I'll do this. 2 years later, I'm in. I told everybody at the table, give me a couple of years, I will get in, because I can do this. Just I need the time to practice, and it was a goal. So I gamified my own work aesthetic in terms of art. Started a Patreon, and every month people can pitch ideas, vote on them, and the number one idea goes into production. And then I have to build it. I have to make the postcards, and I send these little postcards out into the ether, 4 corners of the world, and rinse, repeat. So it basically forces me, it gamifies to keep me on track, keep me on schedule. My patrons, shout out to them, have been fantastic. They have let me rebuild my portfolio 3 times over, which is that's exactly what you need to do as an artist. You need to constantly be churning over, let go of your old pieces, new pieces come in, and then your portfolio is constantly your best work, your best foot forward. And what happened was, I started doing drawings of this, that, and the other. I posted in a Google, I forget what their social media thing was, Google Plus, Google Wave.
G Plus, yeah, G Plus.
G Plus, there was a G, so I started listening to, I went through about Blackwater Creek. I'm like, who are these guys? That was fantastic. Oh, yeah. Scott Dorwood wrote this. Oh, he's great. Oh, they have a podcast. I started listening to their good friends at Jackson Elias to learn how to play Call of Cthulhu and be a better keeper, and GM. Yeah. And then I'm like, man, I'm going to draw this Dark Young, blah, blah, spoiler. And I dropped it. The experience, I drew my character experiencing Blackwater Creek, blah, blah, blah. And I posted it in the G Plus, and they go, hey, that's awesome. You want our zine? I'm like, hell yeah, sure. And that's how the rest is history. I started doing artwork for their zine. I got invited to games. They liked my art. They invited me to some play testing. And so then I got into a couple games with Scott Dorwood, and Paul Fricker was a fan. Matt Sanderson, got to know them just by submitting art to their zine. They loved my work. And then we got to talking, and then Paul Fricker, bless his heart, man, he's like, I have a new scenario coming out. You want to do the cover? And I'm like,
excuse me?
I looked at the email and then set my phone down, screamed like a girl, and I'm like, and then I waited a few hours because you don't want to be too you play coy. I play coy.
A little hard to get. Keep him wanting a little more.
I was walking my fantastic dog, Ray. She's a tripod, and she's everything to me. And I was walking her, and I was out on the trail, and I'm like screaming at my phone, "This is it!" And I did a cover for him, and and funny story, he kept on. British are very deadpan, even keel, and I kept on sending him versions of it. How's this? And he's all, "It's all good. It's all good." And I'm like, I do it again and do more. And I'm like, how's it now? He's all, it's all good. I asked another British friend of mine, like, what does it take to get a rise out of you guys? Blah, blah, blah. No. If they're saying it's all good, that's like American. Yeah. He's like, no, that's British for, F yeah. You're golden. If he's saying that you're in. And so anyway, finally, that project came out. It was very good hit. It is fantastic. Go check out Full Fathom 5, Paul Fricker. It's in the Miskatonic repository. It is 1800s whaling ship Cthulhu. Things go sideways. It's very well researched, and I was tickled to be on that one. It is very unique. Paul is the master of doing really mess with your head scenarios that are just unique. He's very good at that. That came out. It did very well. And Mike, he gave a nod and said, I'll put the good word in for you to Mike Mason. And I sent in my portfolio. At that point, I actually had everything I needed. to submit. I had enough pieces that I thought were good enough, and my portfolio was in a good spot. And I sent it into Chaosium, and got an email pretty much straight away. And Mike says, "We love your work, and we'll be in touch." And trivia. Paul Fricker posed for the captain, lower right-hand corner, and I posed for the other ones because I needed models. You just do this in your living room. You take photos. You make your own model. Your own models.
That cover is so compelling.
Let's see if I can zoom in a bit.
Sign me up. I want to know. There's so much mystery and story and fear and excitement in just that two-dimensional image. Sumrow, it's really, really phenomenal. It's really magnificent work. I'm glad that was a key milestone in launching your game art career.
I was tickled to be on that one. Paul is super nice guy, and the best comment, he goes, "We are fans of your work." He was talking about the good friends, Jackson and Elias. He goes, "We're friends of your work. Your work has energy and life to it," and that floored me. That was like the best comment I could have received at the time. Working on my chops, working on my, trying to get better and get a portfolio together to get in.
Yeah, breathing life into an image is that's really where the art is. I mean, we were going to talk a little bit about AI, right? And how AI is seeping its way into the industry. And I just can't imagine a computer that could ever generate something as compelling, as interesting, fascinating, scary, and fun as that cover that you produced. For our audio listeners, feel free to go to, I think I pulled this up on DriveThruRPG for Full Fathom 5 for Call of Cthulhu, and it's an image of, how would you describe this character levitating above the water? What would be this guy's wizard?
Yes, he is definitely on another plane. Yes, a very wizened. Can't spoil it.
So he's hovering above the deck of the ship. The ocean is completely in a state of tumult that is otherworldly, and there are normal people out on the deck pretty much freaking out about what they're seeing. So that's my quick, horrible audio description, Sumrow, of your magnificent piece of art. I just want to have the audio listeners, if you're not, check us out on YouTube. If you can't check us out on YouTube, go on DriveThruRPG, look up Full Fathom 5, and you'll see what we're talking about.
So there's two things, Sumrow, that stand out to me with this piece that I really, really like. One is your contrasting colors that you have, right? That you've got that sort of that bluish green hue that's kind of all over, and then you've got the gold on his robes that are really just standing out, and the white in his beards that really just like stands out and really makes it the focus of the picture. And in conjunction with that, your lines on this thing are amazing, right? Like, so you've got like the lines of the sail, like on the right side coming down, like almost in line with his hand. The line of like, looks like the bow of maybe another ship that's coming in, that's kind of, connecting that a little bit. You've got the railing of the ship that divides the bottom third with the top 2/3. You've got the two pillars of water that give you your thirds like vertically. Like, the lines make this so dynamic, and I love it. And the arms too, right? The arms form that pointing triangle that's just like, look at this guy. Like, you can't help but stare at him, and it's horrible and amazing all at the same time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Shout out to my buddy Isaac. He posed for that in his garage with like a knitted quilt.
That's awesome.
I'm like, hey, I need somebody, and he had a killer beard at the time, and I'm like, hey, I need somebody grizzled, and I need, just throw a blanket over your shoulders. I need this kind of pose. And I drew him a sketch, and he knocked it out of the park. I try to work with as much reference as possible. And all those lines are that's all planned. I am a firm believer in, if you look at the classical paintings or anybody worth their salt, Every element in the painting should have some kind of logic to it, like what it's doing, where it's pointing, what's it do, why is it there? And once you start doing all these leading lines to everything points to the subject, which is the guy's face, the magic, or whatever's going on. It's kind of symmetrical. I'm not thrilled about a perfectly symmetrical piece, but this one, I mean, Frazetta did a lot of symmetrical stuff. It's fine,
Right.
for what it is. If you need that, you can't beat a nice, pyramid shaped composition. Yeah, thank you, and shout out to Matt Sanderson. He is so good at layout and topography and everything. The font he chose perfectly. When I saw it, when they finally sent to me the final copy of what the cover was gonna with all the type on it, Matt did it, and he literally the font echoes the knots in the rope on all the rigging, and that floored me. I saw it immediately, and I knew, that he's worth his salt. Totally, he earned his salt on that one, because that was it's such a small detail. It ties the whole thing together. Everything is thought out. There's no, he earned his salt on that one. That was fantastic.
Well, the way he curved the text too, right? The typography there almost matches the curve and the magic that is also going on between, this sorcerer's hands. I'm going to call him the sorcerer. So you've got kind of that bow, and it just really feels very organic together, and it's really nice. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, and that was like kind of a different piece. I tried to keep a limited palette on that one. I wasn't too comfortable doing a lot of different crazy colors at the time, and it felt like keeping it kind of aquas and like a kind of like a yellow ochre kind of gold kind of thing. It saved my sanity working on the thing, because it kept my palette in check. It was one less thing to deal with, trying to knock this out of the park, and it was very well received. I could not be happier.
Yeah, it's awesome. So this was your first official Call of Cthulhu artwork that you did?
Official, unofficial? It is Miskatonic. Okay. Yes, it actually goes through the Miskatonic repository. It is official. It is not like published like straight from Chaosium, but yeah, It was my. I was over the moon to be working with Paul Fricker, the guy who wrote the mechanics for 7th edition.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's a good friend. I consider him a very good friend these days, and I'm happy to work with that whole crew anytime. Good friends with Jackson Elias. They are fantastic.
That's awesome. Let's talk about some of your other work that you do. Let me pull up your website for those who would like to follow along at home listening. You can go to johnsumrow.com. That's JOHNSUMROW.com. And let me pull it up here, because it is an excellent website to go and check out some of the latest stuff that he has done. So I assume these 3 pieces, I know that I remember this one on the left, Awake in the Bones, because shortly after I had contacted you about coming on the podcast, you had put it out on Twitter saying, hey, what do y'all think? I think it was for your Patreon that you were working on, or maybe it was I just remember thinking that is very it feels super RuneQuesty to me, right? And,
oh, nice. Yeah.
I don't know if it was or if it was just your Patreon, but I really, really enjoy it. It's kind of a necromancer woman that's bringing life to a skeleton, and there's like swirling green mist that's entering the skeleton. It's very very magic heavy, and I love it.
Yeah, that's actually a girlfriend post for that one. I was quite tickled to have her on board, and it's like, hey, you want to delve into some necromancy? And she's like, yeah, of course. So and I went with it's quite fun to put your your loved ones and your friends and everything in the pieces. It's super fun. Yeah, the top row, that's the girlfriend on the left. That's my dog Ray. She's a tripod. She's amazing. And
Awesome.
my patrons all, hey, you should do Ray in space. I'm like, okay. And then my buddy John Cox, he does this killer Santa Claus every year, and he's all, I'm like, one day I'm gonna make you a wizard, man. I tell you, the stars aligned this past Christmas. I'm like, your beard is kicking, it's bumping. I need to do a winter card for my patrons. Come on over. We spent a half an hour shooting the Shinola, and I put a $10 shop light in front of them on a tripod. Lit it.
Very good.
Yeah. Oh, you can do amazing things with very simple lighting. It doesn't take much. We shot a couple pictures on my phone. I had everything I needed. And then a couple weeks later, that was easily one of my best received Christmas cards. So, and it's one of my favorite pieces. And to the Awaken the Bones, that one was super fun, kind of complicated because the lighting is weird. It's like low angle, and it's like not straight on lighting. It's like the lighting is actually in the plane of view that throws things off. Of course, I've done that before, obviously. The armor, I specifically went for like a Bronze Age armor too, to give it that kind of Rune Questy look. So yeah, good call, Justin. Yes, that is a Bronze Age piece of armor.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like this one because it reminds me of some of the best artwork we had. I know we're of similar vintages. I remember being really inspired by the different RPG magazine covers that were out in the day, like on the, what was it Dragon magazine? What were the main D&D magazines? There's something about that composition that it's new and it's current, but it also has a great flavor of that kind of, vintage RPG 80s feel that I have a deep level of nostalgia for, because that's when I started gaming, was back in those days.
Yeah, yes, you had me on vintage. Yeah, that's it, man. I like I said, I didn't play. I played D&D for one summer when I was a little bitty kid, and then I just couldn't grok it because I was way too young. But it was cool. But I distinctly remember like Fiend Folio, all that black and white stuff, Dragon Magazine, all that. I was a sucker for going to the mall and hitting the, I'm blanking on there's a bookstore, and I used to go check out Walden Books in the
Walden, day. Yeah, or the Gamekeeper and stuff like that. Yeah.
Went to old Walden Books and picked up Frank Frazetta's different books and some Michael Wieland, and I liked a lot of the black and white stuff and the Astounding Stories, Amazing Stories. Virgil Finlay is a huge influence. Love his stuff. If you've never seen black and white stuff from Virgil Finlay, check him out. But yeah, and I've been told over the years, your stuff's kind of vintage and retro and painterly, and I'm like, that's exactly the stuff I like. So if it shows, I'm happy that it shows.
Good. I have a deep appreciation for that. So marvelous job.
Thank you. One of the questions I have for you is, and I think you partially answered this already, but maybe things have changed a little bit since you started getting into sort of doing art for you and then art for gaming. But the question I have for you is, like, if I were, let's say, coming out of high school, or college or something like that, like I've got an art degree, or I've got a real love for art and a talent for it and things like that, and I absolutely love the gaming space. Like, what would be a good path for, a person like that to try to break into the art space? I know you said you've got your Patreon, which I assume it's patreon.com/John Sumrow, or what?
Correct.
What is yeah, okay. Patreon.com/John Sumrow. Everybody can go check it out and sign up for these monthly amazing pieces of art that he puts out, because they're ridiculously good. But so what would you, like, if you were to give advice to somebody who's like, I really want to try to make it in the business, like what would you tell them?
Yeah, I've had this conversation a few times, and it kind of gets refined each time. You kind of want to work backwards. You want to start do what you love and do that all the time. Always be finishing your next piece, whatever that is, and then finish another piece. And you need to build a body of work. And how do you do that? How do you, wrangle all that in when there's so many options in the world, so many different directions. So I kind of worked backwards, and this is what worked for me is, what do I like? Oh, I like games. I like Call of Cthulhu. I like Dungeons and Dragons. I like the art. I love the Magic the Gathering art. Some of it's a little too polished for me. I like a little more rough, a little more natural. But it's a game. That's what they need, right? But so figure out what you like to do. That's your starting point, and then you figure out, well, what are my goals? And mine were, I think I wrote 3 goals when I started getting, started finishing pieces, putting a portfolio together. You need 10 solid pieces in a portfolio. They need to be consistent, and they need to be consistency is the biggest thing. So then you go, well, okay, I like this kind of company, or I like this kind of product. I like this kind of work. Find out who buys that kind of work, or who publishes that kind of work. And then you connect the dots. You move forward with your portfolio, and you work backward from the endpoint, which is the goal. And mine was, man, I really like dragons. I like Fantasy Flight board games. I like Edge of the Empire. I like Call of Cthulhu.
Oh my gosh. You're singing my favorite song, my friend.
Right. So, and I found the endpoints. These are the companies who make the things I like and I play. And now my portfolio is moving forward. Always be finishing a new piece and dumping your least favorite piece. And then over time, this is no cakewalk. This takes time. Know that, right? It's going to take time. Like I said, it took me I had to rebuild my portfolio 3 times over time to finally have a body of work that was consistent enough and sellable enough that a company like Chaosium comes along and goes, what you do, that is what we buy, and come on in. And to find the work. So those are 2 things. Like, find the goals that you want to achieve artistically, whatever they are. Those are the endpoints. Figure out where you're at. Those are the starting points, and move your portfolio in that direction. And things will change. You might take side quests, fine, but always be finishing. Like, it's man, what is it? That movie? It's I'm blanking, but it's what's this?
Always be closing. Glengarry Glen Ross, right?
Yeah, intense movie, and that I tell that people all the time. Always be closing, or I phrase it: always be finishing the next piece.
Yeah.
If you have 10 pieces that aren't finished, you're training yourself not to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, warts and all, finish the damn project or piece or whatever you're working on. Let it go. Do the next one, and you'll get, always be finishing. That's the name of the game. And I've moved glacially slow. I do, but when I do finish something, it's where I'm happy. But yeah, so to your point, so how do you get in? Also, so those are 2 things that are happening, right? You're making goals, make them realistic, have some off the chart. But realistic goals, you need those 2, and then work your portfolio towards that. And in the meantime, be humble, be nice, and get your stuff on the internet and put it in groups like Discord, Facebook groups, wherever. I can't really talk about it, but I just recently did it's in my black and white portfolio. I did this Beholder piece, and I just finished it like 2 weeks ago. I put it in the right groups on Facebook that love that kind of art. And the next morning I woke up, I was sitting with a girlfriend on the couch, and I'm like, and I had the best morning ever when I read this email, and this company who I'd love to work for said, hey, we saw your Beholder. You want to work on some stuff? And I'm like, yes. And that's how you do it. I mean, you be nice, be humble, and put your art in places. Don't just shove it out there, but say, hey, this is my new piece. I'm working on this. I love this kind of art. And hopefully you get, you need people, if it's good and you're nice about it, people will see it, people will share it, and you'll make friends along the way. I am the biggest cheerleader of everyone who does any kind of creativity. You write, you do dance, you do, Sculpting, I don't care. I will be the biggest cheerleader if you want to stick your neck out there and put something that you made into the world and take the slings and arrows and the head stuff that comes with that of just releasing something into the world knowing it's going to be criticized. That's no cakewalk, but if you do it, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. I if I cheer along 1,000 more artists and they come along for the ride or whatever and become, what's that to me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it as competition. Like you said previously, like the game space, rising tide lifts all boats, man. Okay, so there's 500 more writers. Fantastic. Great. What are they writing? Cool stuff. They need art for that. Cool. It doesn't hurt me at all. If we make the industry better, we'll all be working. I have no problem with that.
All right. So a couple questions. One,
sure.
If I am looking to put my stuff out as an artist, you mentioned Facebook groups or Discord, channels or something like that. How effective do you think are platforms like DeviantArt or ArtStation? Or are they well used, or are they just kind of a little archaic now? Or is it better to go into Facebook groups where there's active people that you can get more comments on or interaction, or
groups.
Groups are way better. Okay.
Yeah. Wherever people are talking, groups are good.
Okay.
Pages are kind of dead. I mean, I have one, but the algorithm, whatever. Groups are the way to go. Discord. I've gotten emails from editors, art directors on. I had a portfolio on ArtStation, and then they did this whole AI thing, and I was kind of being salty that weekend. I'm like, I'm gonna just delete my portfolio, and I don't have. At the time, I didn't really have a big presence there anyway. I probably need to get back on there, and I don't know. But yeah, I can't really speak to DeviantArt. I had one way back in the day, but I'm not on there. I'm sure it's great. Anywhere that a conversation is going on, that's the key. Even the bands that I love, I'll go into their Discord, and I mean, if I love your damn band, and your Discord's cool, shout out to Unleash the Archers. But yeah, yeah, a lot of them have like, hey, here's your art channel and post your stuff in there. Be nice. Don't be Don't be spammy. Just be a human being. That's a big one. Be a human being. Be nice and post your stuff and talk to be a member of the community and talk,
Yeah.
And that's how I got.
I think some of the pages that they have, right, like DeviantArt, ArtStation, what they suffer from is terrible search engines, right? Like there's so many people that are putting their stuff up there. You say like, oh, I'd like to see a picture of an elf in, in like a wooded area, and you end up getting some just like very off the wall things. Like it just doesn't seem like either they're tagged very well, or they pull from the descriptions very well, or maybe people just take some art and just slap it up there and don't put any description in there, right? And so it's hard to get it. And so I feel like where the discussions are, it garners more attention and ability for feedback and ability to kind of promote it just a little bit. Like you said, don't be weird about it, but you can still talk about it, being like, hey, this is my thing that I did, and hopefully you like it, and let me know what you think, kind of thing. So it can get the conversation started a little bit more that way.
Be a real human. I mean, that's it. Be a real human, make comments, be a member of the community, and don't be spammy. I mean, and build your own community. I mean, I'm trying to build I have a Facebook group that's fantastic. They're great. A lot of people post creative things. It's all different types of art of all kinds, and people are trying to share creative things with each other. Here's a how-to. Here's something that's cool. Here's a new thing on here. Blah blah blah. I try to post like 4 or 5 to 1, of creative things I find inspiring. How to. I'll share everything that gives you a boost to be creative. And then, of course, I'm going to come in when I finish something and I think it's ready for prime time. I'll come in and say, hey, this is my latest piece, but I will give way more than I show, because you need to help everyone along to do whatever they're after, because that's the, and it's been, Aaron Miller gave me his time, and you can meet your heroes, and you can, it comes around. I don't have no problem spending time. If people walk up to my booth at like Genghis Khan or whatever, and they say, "Hey, how do I get on your side of the table?" I'll tell you exactly how to do it. And I'm like, "Where you at? Where you're at? Where's your portfolio? What do you got?"
Right.
And then and I'll tell you my path and what I did to get where I'm at. And your path is going to be different, but this worked for me. If you got a better idea, I'll listen to you. It's like,
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, and this is the thing, is that I think the competition in different industries or strata of society or whatever happens when people feel like they can maybe try to take a shortcut to get up to the front, and someone says, "Hey, you cut in line, like, what are you doing?" type of thing. But, the way that you're talking about how this whole process works, you could tell them the exact path. You could draw out the map for them. The fact is they still got to go down and put pen to paper or colored pencil to paper or, like whatever it is, like they still have to go do the work and make their own way, forge it ahead. You can, again, give them the map of the milestones and, the way to do things, but they've got to do it. And so I think that kind of helps eliminate some of the competition, because you feel like, hey, look, if you're going to make it, it's because you've probably put in the work. You've done the time, you've done the effort, you've done this, and I'm happy to help consult or provide guidance or, tell you how I did it. But if you end up making it, it's because I know you literally did the legwork, you literally put in the time, you put in the effort, and you should be commended for that, right?
Yeah. Well, there's no, to your point, there's no shortcuts in art,
right? Exactly.
And the shortcuts you think will work. That's, you're just preventing yourself from progressing. I resisted doing. Everybody does this. I'm not, shattering any illusions here. It's like, oh, everybody like puts people's hands in their pocket, because you don't want to draw the hand. Everybody does that. Or you avoid doing hands, feet, whatever, for the longest time. When you finally embrace it and walk into the pain, that's like a Zen thing. You should walk into the pain and you just get it over with. Do the hands, and guess what? Once you start doing hands and faces and feet and stuff, it becomes it does get easier over time, and then it gets fun. Like I resisted doing people for the longest time because they're so complicated. They're so hard. Spaceships are easy. Animals, more complicated. I just did a horse because I needed I need to practice horses. Horses are a pain in the ass. But yeah, horses are tough. But guess what?
It's too easy to make them look like camels.
If you want to do fantasy art, people and horses are bread and butter. Art directors, can you do a horse? Can you do people? Can you do, in action? That's the name of the game. So walk into the pain, and once you start getting better at it, it becomes fun. It doesn't get easier, but it does. You reach a certain point where it's not a chore anymore, and you can say, oh wow, I can do this now. And then the next thing you can attempt, it's still going to be hard, it's still going to be work, but the things you can aim for and achieve goes up, and then your eyes get bigger, and then the stuff, it's a cycle, and you level up, and now it's never easier, but the things you can aim for get bigger, and you go, oh wow, I just did this, like I put 5 figures in there, all in action, and a horse and a blah, blah, blah. And it all worked. And then you go, okay, I can do that now. That's interesting. That's a new level. Now what can I do? And then that feeds your excitement and your energy,
Yeah. I found similar things in miniature painting, right? Like you start out, you put it on and you're just like, okay, that was pretty basic. And then you work on your blending and you work on your edge highlighting and you work on your contrast and your, light contrast and color contrast, and you just kind of do these different techniques and things, and soon you get to a point where I had a friend the other day ask me to help kind of teach him how to paint. I'm like, well, you just kind of do that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I realized, I was like, that's like I'm telling him how to do like level 3, level 4 stuff, and he's at level 1, And I'm like, okay, well, you can't just do that. So let's start from the basics. You know what I mean? Because you have to go through and put in the time and level yourself up literally as you go through it. So,
and that is a logical progression, right? You start with the beginning stuff and you level up. But there is a thing to the second you start looking at the stuff you really want to, your heroes, the level of polish or whatever, the big time stuff that you love and gravitate toward, when you start aiming for that, you'd be amazed at how fast and good you get when you knuckle down and really try to, and that's like a thing, right? Like there's a very long tradition in the arts. Like, hey, I really like this guy or gal or whatever. And I'm going to take their best piece. I'm going to make a clone of it, and do a study. That's what studies are all about. And then once you're in their headspace, you if you try to emulate how do you need to deconstruct it? How do they do this? Did they do an underpainting? Did they, what was the underpainting? Was it red? Was it brown? Was it blue? And then oh, okay, they did this. Okay. You will learn tons doing that, and it's a very tried and true tradition of emulating your heroes.
Let me ask you kind of one last question, and I don't want to get into anything too personal, so I'm not going to ask you kind of like what you charge for your stuff or what you get paid for your stuff. But if I were new into the industry, right, or let me put it this way. If I were writing my own RPG, I wanted to put it out on Kickstarter, right? Like I need some art type of thing. What kind of price range am I looking for artists in this kind of day and age? Like I know there's probably a wide spectrum, and I'm sure it depends on the type of piece that you're asking for, like a cover art versus like a little figure in in the ledger of a book type of thing. But is there any idea that you could give us, like if you were looking to get art for your RPG, any kind of rule of thumb or anything like that?
That is a huge question.
Yes, it is.
And I don't mind at all talking, money numbers or anything. That doesn't bother me. In fact, people really should get over the whole being shy about money and all that. It's part of it's the business. You need to talk business. Get over it.
Right,
it's fine.
Right.
It's fine. The I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories or anything, but the higher ups don't want you talking money because that if you don't, that gives them power and they have leverage. Like why would? But as from my bottom up approach, I'm like, let's talk about this. Hey, what do you remember? And who cares? I mean, really, it's business. It's fine. The problem with your question is it's a good question. The problem is it is so wide and diverse. Like and I'm talking purely, do you have one person on the cover wielding a sword, or do you have an army of 1,000 people on horseback? That is two different things. It's the same image. Right. It's the same dimensions. It's 8.5 by 11 or A5 if you're doing a small, half size thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is my quandary. This is everyone's artist quandary. So it's a U.S. postage stamp that's exactly 1.5 inches wide by 3/4 inch tall of a duck in a pond. That oil painting took the guy or gal how long to paint? That's an oil painting. That's probably 12 by 16, or it's an 8 by 10 or 11 by 14, somewhere in there. Probably 12 by 16, I'm guessing. For a postage stamp. The final product, it's the same size. It's a postage stamp, but guess what? The actual work and the size is an oil painting of a good size. You know what I'm saying? Covers are all over the map. It depends on it. It all comes down to complexity. If somebody says, I just need an eyeball on a shield laying in a field, blah blah blah, with and whatever. I mean, it all comes down to. Yeah, it's all the complexity of the piece. And you could probably Google like what a Magic the Gathering card is going for these days. I've heard. Let's just go there. I mean, because that's what everybody wants to know, right? I don't have any current figures. I'm guessing, anecdotally, from what I've heard, this, that, and the other, they're probably like 600 to 800.
Wow.
For starters, I think once you've been there doing them a couple times, I think they go up to past $1,000. And if you're somebody of note, it probably goes further up I'm guessing maybe around $2,000 or up. Best guess. I'm sure you can Google it, but for self-published, excuse me, for a self-published independent scenario or something like that, it really depends on the complexity of the piece. If you just want like a landscape or something, like $400 or $500 for a simple landscape, for a small time self-published cover of a scenario or something, you start adding figures in there. I usually add about $100 per figure, so if you get something complex, it's all, and we want a ship and we want an airplane and they're fighting. Okay. And I know that's I'm all over the map, but it literally
I mean, how it is sense, though, right?
It's the quantity of work associated with the final outcome.
Yeah. Is it black and white? Is it ink on paper? Is it literally line art? Well, that's a different beast than a oil painting, or a digital. There's so many variables I can't tell you. And that's the problem. But what you need to do if you're an artist, just see what's out there, see where you fit in the pack, where you're at, and be humble but be own your work, and be have people be proud of your work. I mean, it's a business, and you can wear both hats. It's okay. Be a business, charge fairly, and
Would you say that your rates are derived more from like the amount of time you put in it, or just the reputation you've built up, or a combination of both?
Everybody's got their own philosophy on things.
Sure.
Per hour, and time is the worst way to gauge something. You need to keep an eye on how long a piece takes you for your own sanity. You need to keep an eye on that, just because if it takes too long, you're going to eat it. But because how do you quantify, okay, I've been painting for 4 or 5 years to get to where I'm at, specifically game art, right? How do you qualify that? How do you quantify that?
Yep.
That's not about earning money per hour is the worst way to be rich. That's just the way it is. I mean, you're always giving your life, your time, your life for money. That's the worst. That's the worst equation. That's not a good equation. You're better off doing a piece. The name of the game is royalties. You really need to be in a space where, and game art, unfortunately, is not really that space. But you want to make things that come back to you and keep paying. That's so your self-publish or die. I believe Becky Cloonan, go check her out. She's fantastic. Comic book creator. Her mantra is self-publish or die. Because that's the only way to go. I mean, if you really want to make a living, go make your own work and self-publish that work so that you can keep making units to make a paycheck. Well, once I get paid for art, high five, I get the paycheck, I'm out, I'm done. That's a terrible way to live. You need to be, and I've thought a lot about all this stuff. But I have my goals, and right now it is getting published, working with companies, see how the industry works, do good work, be in good projects, and make a name for myself. And then down the road, obviously, I'll probably work on my own projects. And that's where ultimately the real money is, in the game industry. I laugh because, the game industry is tiny compared to other industries, but it's fun. It's a good industry. It is fantastic to be able to work on things you like playing. I had this conversation at Genghis Khan with Doug from Free League. Super cool guy. And we were talking about art and all these things. And I would love to work for Free League. Absolutely. But the thing is, it's not a good fit for where my art is. I wouldn't fit in Morkborg. I would love to work on that stuff. Sure. It's not my style. And I take, I'm not heartbroken because it's not a good fit, right? You need to find, as an artist, find your fit on the titles that that you fit in the stuff you want to do. Vason, gorgeous. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That artist, I forget
right.
his name. He that is a perfect match in heaven. That guy's art and that game. It
feels so folklore. You know what I mean? Like the art is just so folklore.
Watercolor. Yeah. Oh yeah, watercolor and ink. Oh man, you had me. That's gorgeous.
It's funny, you mentioned like, how do you quantify, all the stuff that led up to it. I was at work the other day. I do communications, right? So I kind of manage like I'll send out sort of, I do corporate communications, manage websites, that kind of thing every now and then. And there was a problem with a website, right? And I had to go in and fix it. And one of the people, that I worked with said, wow, I mean, it took me like 5 minutes to do, when other people were taking like a lot longer to do it. And they said, wow, the government just spent all this money for you to fix this 5-minute problem. And I was like, no. The government pays me, because I contracted the government. I said, the government's paying me for all the years that I have learned how to do this in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It's not, they're not paying me for my actual time. They're paying me for the knowledge that I have acquired over that time. And I can absolutely see how, like, being an artist is the same way. Like, it's not just your time per hour, but it's, your style that you've developed. It's your creativity you've developed. It's, the finished polish and products that you put on your stuff that that people are paying for, right? It's not just your, okay, well, it's been 15 minutes, so I'll give you X amount of dollars or whatever. It just doesn't work like that. So yeah, it's great. But Sumrow, I really appreciate you coming on the show. We had meant to talk a little bit about AI in art, but we're an hour and 45 minutes into our podcast, and I think you're going to have to come back if you're so inclined.
Oh, I would love to.
I think that would be an awesome conversation in and of itself. That we could really kind of, you said it was a black hole earlier, and I think you're probably right. We could, dive into that for a while, and I think that would be a great conversation. But it was great to get to know you, great to get to know your process, great to see your amazing art. Like I've got pulled up on the screen right now, the piece that you did for Cult of Cthulhu. And this is the kind of art that I like, that draws me into playing Call of Cthulhu. Like it's vivid, it's imaginative. I mean, I'm looking at this guy that is feeling like he just got a rush of ultimate power, which corrupts ultimately, but rocks ultimately as well. So it and you are kind of the visual person, and people, when they look for RPGs and they look for some of this stuff, the artwork is what draws them in, right? I like to say people come for the artwork and they stay for the game. So you should definitely be pleased. We're a big fan of your work, and we're super happy to have you come on the show and talk to us all about it.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure. I mean, you guys want to go down the AI rabbit hole? Happy to do it. But Justin, Dan, seriously, my pleasure being here.
Very good. Now,
fantastic, and you're an amazing artist. I'm a huge fan. Just getting to know your stuff and prep for this show. So keep up the great work, and hopefully our paths will cross again very soon. Maybe in another show or at a con or on the intertubes, as it were.
Right.
Again, for our listeners out there, please check out Sumrow stuff at www.johnsumrow.com. There he has links to a lot of the work that he has done, as well as his Patreon, where you can get monthly art pieces that he will do for you. So go check him out, and spread the love to a fellow creator in the hobby space here with us. So again, John, thank you so much for coming on, and we will catch all of you later.